All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And I'm just going to be continuing with the book of Daniel, the seventh chapter. I think yesterday I went through the first seven verses, which was a little bit in depth. Um, but we're going to continue from the eighth verse on down, and Lord willing, try to get through the whole chapter today. So, picking up where we left off with the seventh chapter, which was dealing with the fourth beast that Daniel saw, and that fourth beast represents the Roman Empire. Okay, and he basically described how dreadful and terrible it looked, and so on and so forth. So, and now this fourth beast that Daniel described, getting to the latter end of it, he mentioned it had 10 horns. So you can imagine some crazy looking animal or creature, and in its head there are 10 horns, which this was symbolic, okay, because the the beast itself represented the Roman Empire, and within the Roman Empire, just like for example within the the alliance of NATO and the EU, the beast today, you have different member countries that make up this power, right? So back then, you had a version of today what you call the EU back then, which were the ancient 10 horns, and they had ancient names such as the Visigoths and Ostrogoths and Burgundians and Anglo Saxons and Heruli and the Franks, and the list goes on. Okay, so those were the original 10 horns. Now in verse 8, Daniel says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. So among the 10 horns, he saw another little horn that came up, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Now, in this verse, in verse 8, the other little horn that Daniel saw come up represents America or Babylon. And when you look among the original 10 horns, you had one of them being the Anglo Saxons. And if you look at the region where the Anglo Saxons dwell, you have basically today it's a part of what you know as the UK. Okay, but it was also in ancient world came to be known as Britannia, right? And we know that Britain or the UK was one of three world powers that came and colonized the Americas. European powers, let me put it like that, that came and colonized the Americas, and and uh, America or the U.S. was originally known as the 13 colonies, right, which was under Britain. So this little horn that came up among those horns before, you could say this horn, which is America, really came from the Anglo-Saxon horn, right, which was one of the 10 horns going back to the ancient world. Okay, which we know America came from Britain. So that's the little horn before whom three of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. Now this the horns being plucked up by the roots are in history, we know these as the wars that were fought between America and the French, the Spanish, and the British. I believe they had the Spanish American War, the French American War, if I'm correct, and also you had the Revolutionary War, which was basically between the U.S. or America and the British. And the reason it says they plucked them up by the roots is because you could say they uprooted them, right? After they defeated them in those wars, they basically took over this western part. Okay, so now how do we know about the three horns, right? The French the Spanish, and the British, they go back to these 10 original horns. Okay. In the ancient world, the British come from the Anglo-Saxons, meaning if you look at the region of the kingdom of Anglo-Saxons or so on, that's where today UK is or Britain is. And if you look at the region for where the Visigoths, which were one of the 10 horns, where they dwelt, I think I actually pulled up one of the images here, right? I just typed in Visigoths kingdom, and if you pull up a map, you can see um, maybe a better, if I could get a one on a world map, but it's basically where modern day Spain is. Okay. But as you can see, it says the kingdom of the Visigoths, which was also known as Hispania. Okay. Visigoths in Spain, early Visigothic Spain. So there's your second horn, right? You have the British, which in the ancient times, as one of the 10 horns, they would be the Anglo-Saxons. And then you had the Spanish, which would go back to the Visigoths. And I'm correlating the modern names to the ancient names or the ancient 10 horns. And then you had the French, which would go to the Franks. Okay, or go back to the Franks. Now, if you look up here, Kingdom of Franks map, you will see that this region that's highlighted here, right, which is known as the Kingdom of the Franks, and you can see the Anglo-Saxons is up here, right? You see London right there. So you have the Franks. This is the same region that you know today as France, as you can see right here. Okay, and when you look it up, it'll tell you that basically the Franks established or what you know today as France, and even the name France is derived from the Franks. Okay, so tying all this back together, back in Daniel 8, the little horn is America. The three horns that it plucked up were the Spanish, the British, and the French. Okay, but when you correlate them to the 10 horns, they would be the Anglo-Saxons, the Visigoths, and the Franks. Now it goes on to say, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Okay, now the eyes like the eyes of man and the mouth speaking great things. We know that one thing about America that we say is they speak very proudly, okay, but also very blasphemously, which are the things that they promote over here. But also going into their eyes, which goes into their left hand wisdom, okay, and their sorceries and witchcraft and all of that, but really their left hand wisdom, because when you go to, let's pull this up. I believe it's Revelation. Yeah, Revelation chapter 5, Revelation 5 and 6, and it reads, and I beheld. Now, Revelation, the 5th chapter, is dealing with, Revelation, the 5th chapter, is dealing with Yahushua. Okay, it goes into how, if you read the chapter, we've done breakdowns on it, but the point is, this was about Yahushua being the only one who was able to loose the seals of the book to do what he did. So in verse 6, it's speaking about Yahushua. As a matter of fact, let me start at verse 5. It reads, and one of the elders saith unto me, unto John, because he was weeping, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, which means that Yahushua was from the lineage of David. Root is a term that's used in, like, when you think about trees, right? And that's why you have something called like a family tree. You have branches and roots and all of that. So Yahushua was of the lineage of David, and that in itself tells you that he had to have been biologically related to Joseph, because Joseph, his father, the carpenter, was also of the lineage of David. And if Joseph never passed on his seed into Mary, Yahushua wouldn't be of the lineage of David. Continuing, it's talking about Yahushua, right? It says, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof, which 7 represents completion. So it doesn't always mean a literal seven. Verse 6, and I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb as it had been slain. And this lamb, having been slain, represents Yahushai. Now it goes on to say, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. Now the 7 horns and 7 eyes represent complete power and complete wisdom, which Yahushai has. Okay, because 7 represents completion. And in this case, the horns represent power and the eyes represent wisdom. So when you go back to Daniel 7, okay, and it speaks about in the 8th verse, it talks about this horn having eyes like the eyes of man. It's going into that their left hand wisdom, which really comes from their sorceries and witchcraft and all that they do on the left hand side. Okay, but through that they're able to the scriptures tell you that they are wiser than Daniel. There's nothing there. I think it says there's no secret that you can hide from them. And a mouth speaking great things. So when you look at, because this horn represents an actual nation, like America, Babylon, and Babylon is majority the people, right? The land itself doesn't really do anything, right? It's the people that make the land. Sodom and Gomorrah was not destroyed because of the actual land. It was destroyed because of the inhabitants and what they were doing. So the country itself doesn't speak with a metaphor, a literal mouth, but it's about the energy and the vibration and the things that they do, and actually some of the things that they actually say and promote. And as we keep on reading, is going to expound on that. Verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. So remember, Daniel is still seeing this vision. So in this vision, he sees the Roman Empire, but he sees it as some dreadful, terrible looking beast with 10 horns. And then he goes on to describe what else he's seeing about this horn and the little horn and the 3 horns that are plucked up. Then he says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. And the Ancient of Days is the Most High, Yahweh. He is known as the Ancient of Days because he has no beginning and no end, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. So he had a woolly hair. Woolly hair translates to what so-called Negroes have, the texture of your hair that you have. It would be considered woolly. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire, which is talking about his chariot. Verse 10, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Now, this fiery stream, could have been a laser from a chariot, or Daniel could have actually just been seeing like an actual fiery stream. Okay. It says thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. So what Daniel was seeing was the time of judgment, when the Most High was ready to bring judgment upon the earth, that ultimate judgment. Verse 11, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Now, this beast that is in Daniel 7 and 11 is really talking about America, because America, we know, is what's going to be given to that burning flame, which is ultimately going to be the thermonuclear missiles and the lasers from the chariots. But in the process of that, the actual whole system, the beast system itself, will crumble. It will break down, because America is the woman that's riding upon that, the heart of it. But this America is actually what's going to be burnt up. Some might think that maybe this beast is correlating back to the 4th beast that Daniel was talking about, or that he saw in verse 7 or 8. Okay, but one of the verses above, because basically it talks about that beast and then it comes down and it says the beast, right? But in actuality, that beast in the verses above, talking about the Roman Empire went down. But it came back again, but today is known as America. Okay, if you can understand that. So today, and that's why this America is designed after Rome. If you actually study how the ancient Rome was like, you will see the parallels between America and ancient Rome, and that's because it's the same spirit that's back here again. Okay, but in Daniel 7:11, that beast that's going to be slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning fire, that's going to be when America is destroyed. Verse 12, and that's going to also involve the breaking down and destruction of the actual beast system itself. So verse 12, it says, as concerning the rest of the beasts, so as concerning the rest of the beasts, which is talking about the first, second, and the third, right, which in the part 1 we went into, which was dealing with the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, and so on and so forth. So concerning them, which those beasts represent different nations that ruled the world at one point, right? So it says they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So we're at the point of Daniel is seeing that like he said, the judgment was set, and then he saw that the beast was destroyed. And then concerning the rest of the other beasts, what he saw was that they had their dominion taken away. So they weren't, obviously their dominion, meaning their rulership or sovereignty, that was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So that's why, number one, you see these other nations, for example, the modern day Assyrians, the modern day Persians, which are the Iranians, or the modern day inhabitants of the Babylonian Empire, or so on and so forth. They're not really in a position of world power now, and even less when the judgment comes, because these other nations, they're going to be put in captivity, as it tells you in what's that, Revelation, the 20th chapter. They're going to be put in captivity for 1,000 years, and then after that, they're going to get their regular lives back, and of course be tributary unto us. Okay, but as it says, they had their dominion taken away, meaning their rulership, their authority was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season, so they ain't going to be completely destroyed. Verse 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. So now what Daniel is seeing in his vision is he's seeing the one that's like the Son of Man is talking about the Messiah, Yahushua. And he came with the clouds, which are chariots, right? And came to the Ancient of Days, which is the Most High. And they brought him near before him. So he's basically seeing Yahushua being brought to the Most High Yahweh. And what happened when he got there? Verse 14, and there was given him dominion, which is rulership, and glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. So what does that mean? That means that Yahushua is going to rule over basically everything and everyone. And there's a precept that talks about it, that the Most High has subjected everything under Yahushua, with the exception of the Most High himself. And that way, if everything is under Yahushua, and Yahushua is under the Most High, then everything is under the Most High. But as it goes on, his dominion is an everlasting dominion. So that's because ultimately, what dominion is that? That's going to be the kingdom of heaven, which is going to be here on earth. And as it says, it's going to be an everlasting dominion. So the kingdom of heaven is not going to be like these other kingdom when the Roman Empire ruled or the Assyrians ruled and they got taken down by this other nation. And that's not going to happen with the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is going to be an everlasting, continuous dominion ruled by the Israelites, starting with Yahushua, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So it's going to be an everlasting kingdom. Verse 15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. So when Daniel, when he got this vision, he was messed up about it. He didn't understand it. It was confusing to him, and it was messing him up. So verse 16, I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So what am I seeing here? Okay, what is this lion with eagle's wings? What is this bear with three ribs in its mouth? But more so, what I'm most interested in is what the hell was that fourth beast with the great iron teeth and all of that. What was that? So it says he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things, which was an angel that made it known to Daniel. These great beasts, so the first beast that you saw, right, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now don't get tripped up because it says the word kings over here. It's really talking about kingdoms. Okay, because the four beasts are not representing four individual kings. They're representing four kingdoms. So these great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth, meaning that you were going to have these kingdoms come up at different times. Really, it was sequentially, but they were all going to reign on the earth at a given point. And at the time when Daniel was receiving this vision, it still is like partially historic and partially prophetic, meaning that at the time Daniel received his vision, some of it had come to pass, but the bulk of it had not happened yet. So the part about the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire, that part had happened. The Babylonians came up and they took over Assyria. As a matter of fact, Daniel was receiving this vision and he's in Babylon. Okay. Verse 18. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom. So basically, you're gonna have these different world empires. They're gonna come up into power at some point, and they're gonna reign over the world. And we know that happened, right? Secular history. But at the end of the day, the saints of the Most High, which the saints of the Most High are Israelites, and there are numerous precepts to prove that. A saint is not just saint this or saint that. They just throw that. No, specifically, a saint is an Israelite. So even these wicked Israelites that are not behaving like sons of God, they're still technically saints. And let's prove that. Saints, even those, might need to space that out, or even them. All right, so here's one. Psalms 148 and 14. I think there's also one in Psalm 50 and 5, if I'm not mistaken. But it reads here, he also exalteth the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints, even of the children of Israel, a people near unto him, praise ye the Lord. So when it says even, it's putting emphasis on the point. That's why there's a semicolon after, right? It's expounding on that point. So the saints are referring to the children of Israel. Now going back to Daniel 7 and verse 18. So the angel is now telling Daniel, these empires are going to come up into power. They're going to reign, but the saints, the Israelites, shall take the kingdom, which I believe when you look into that word there, take, it is, it's not laquach, quabal, right? So you have the word here. Now, when it might be all the chapters in Daniel, but I know for the most part, like Daniel 8, Daniel 5, Daniel 7, when you look into the interlinear concordance, it'll first take you to the Aramaic version. And then when you look here, it'll tell you corresponding to, which will take you to the Hebrew. Aramaic is like a dialect of Hebrew. Okay. So when you look at the Aramaic, you have Qobal, which also goes to the Hebrew word Qobal. But sometimes the pronunciations or the spellings are slightly different from the Aramaic to the Paleo Hebrew. Okay. So you have here Qobal, it says here to receive, right? It says Aramaic corresponding to, and then this is the Hebrew version. Same thing, quabal, to take, receive, to accept, right? But at the end of the day, we're gonna take the kingdom, right? And when you take something from someone, technically you've also received it. Okay, it has now come into your possession. And as a matter of fact, this is also the same word in Daniel the fifth chapter when it talks about how Darius the Mede took the kingdom. That word there is, I believe, it's also kabal, which is to receive or to accept. All right, which could also mean, as it says here, to take. Let's see if it shows up on here. Okay, they don't have it on here, but maybe I'll search it anyway. Is Daniel 5 and 31. Took, right? So let me actually read it. So and Darius the Median took the kingdom, which is talking about Babylon, right? Being about 62 years old, so 62 years old. And when you go into the word took, you can see it's the same word there, which is quabal, right? In the Aramaic, to receive, and then corresponds with the Hebrew quabal, which also means to receive or to accept, to receive one to the other, to take. Okay, so let's go back to Daniel 7 and verse 18. So what's verse 18 basically saying? That we're going to come up into power. And that's going to be the beginning of the kingdom of heaven. As it says, and possess the kingdom, right? So the dominion, the rulership, forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. So Daniel's like, okay, now I understand what the first three beasts are. You're telling me they represent different kingdoms that will come up and reign. You're telling me that also we are going to get to reign forever and ever. But I want to know about the fourth beast. What was that? Because that one looked very different from all the other ones that I saw. So that's what he's saying here in verse 19, right? Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse, meaning different from all the others. So this one was very different. So what was this about? Exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And this is talking about the Roman Empire and the fierceness of the fierceness and strength of their military, which they were able to use to conquer and subdue all the nations that were round about them. That's what it means by breaking in pieces and stamping the residue with his feet. When somebody's under your feet, that means you have total control over them. You're above them. You've stomped them out, so to speak. If there was a fight and you came late to that fight, and when you got there, you saw one person standing and another person under that person's foot, meaning this person had his foot on the other person, maybe their neck or their chest or whatever. I mean, common sense tells you that the fight didn't begin that way. There was some conflict, some violence, some war, something that happened in order for this person to end up under the other person's feet. The dude didn't just see him and just lay down under his feet. So that means this person must have been stronger, and he whooped this guy's ass, defeated him, and subjected him. That's how you end up under somebody's feet. So when it says that they stamped the residue with their feet, that means they took them over, whether by consent or conquest. Because another fun fact about the Romans is the Roman Empire did not always conquer their enemies with war. And that's because they understood that when you have a lot of enemies that are conquered with war, they become bitter, right? And it becomes, you are reigning over these people basically with an iron fist, and they tend to build resentment, and eventually they revolt, and you have a lot more revolts that you have to deal with. So you can have that, or like the Romans did, as they started to expand, what they would do is they would assimilate, and maybe a better word would be they would sort of offer these nations, hey, you be subject unto us, you be tributary unto us, we'll make you a province, and we'll set up consoles and stuff like that in here, but we will also offer you citizenship, right? That's how Paul was a citizen. So Paul was a citizen of Rome. He was a Roman citizen, but Paul wasn't born in Rome. So how did he gain that citizenship? Because that's one of the things that the Romans did as they conquered. They would offer citizenship. If you were willingly gonna subject to them, then they didn't need to be violence. You would be tributary. You would know your place, right? And you would do what you got to do. And when they did that, it basically fostered that relationship of, okay, I'm over you, but you're not really looking at it as, damn, I'm waiting for the chance where I'm gonna revolt against this guy. Now, and some, don't get it twisted, there were still places that they took over that were like that. That's always how it is, because Rome wasn't an absolute power. You know who's gonna be an absolute power? Yahweh Shai and the kingdom of Israel, starting with the elect. So at that point, it doesn't matter who we conquered. Nobody's ever gonna be able to revolt. Okay, but that's also one of the ways that the Roman Empire, did their expansion. One of the methods or tactics that they used. Yeah, that's right. America is Mystery Babylon. Yep, that's correct. Okay, so continuing on, verse 19. So as Daniel was talking, he said, I want to know what's this fourth beast. Verse 20, and of the 10 horns that were in his head. So yeah, this fourth beast that looked all crazy, which had 10 horns in his head, what was that? And of the other which came up, and then that little horn that came up, what's that about too? Before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Now, when you look into the word stout, if you look into it, if you look at a modern definition of the word stout, like in Google, if we type in here stout, it's gonna tell you something like this: somewhat fat or of a heavy build, plump, fattish, portly, okay, pot-bellied, chunky, heavy built. So thick, right? Thicker or bigger. And but if you look at it, if you look at the word stout in the online etymology dictionary, the root meaning, one of the definitions you see here is proud and haughty. Okay, which fits America, right? Stately, proud. That fits this horn, this little horn that Daniel is inquiring about, that had those eyes and a mouth speaking great things. Okay, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Okay, and when you look into the word fellows, it tells you. Let's pull it up. It says here allies or friends, and that's really what a fellow is, right? Your fellow brethren, your fellow yokeman. See, it says here associate, fellow, companion. Now here's an example of what I was mentioning earlier. This is the Aramaic, and you can see the word there is different. You have what's that? Chabra or chabara, and then when you go into the Hebrew, but you can see the spelling is different here, because this is a ha, but it's likely a silent ha at the end, right? Ra, like how you have Yahweh. So Yahweh has a ha at the end, but you drop the a, and you merge the wa and the ha, so you get wa, Yahweh. So now you have, going into the Hebrew, you have chabar, right? Which is the actual word there. So it says for fellow, and you have associate, companion, friend, comrade, fellow. And when you look at the friends or comrades or fellows of America, which is the little horn, they are the proudest of them all. They're as proud as they go. So verse 21, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints. So like, let me see if yeah, okay, I'm on the right track. So verse 21, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Now this horn, once again, is talking about America, and the saints are talking about the Israelites. And the for example, when America came up into power, they made war with both the northern and the southern kingdom. Okay, but you can ask yourself, how is it that today, the Native Americans that are living on reservations descend from the Native Americans that pretty much owned the Americas, or they had the they were the ones here living here, right? So how did they end up on reservations? And the settlers end up with basically taking up all this other space here through war. So one example of actual physical war, when you look this up, the American Indian Wars, it'll tell you the American Indian Wars, also known as the American Frontier Wars and Indian Wars, were fought by European governments and colonists in North America, and later by the United States government and American settlers against various American Indian tribes. And those American Indian tribes are part of the Saints because they're Israelites. These conflicts occurred in the United States from the time of the earliest colonial settlements in the 17th century until the end of the 19th century. The various wars resulted from a wide variety of factors, the most common being the desire of settlers and governments for Indian tribes' lands. The European powers and their colonies also enlisted allied Indian tribes to help them conduct warfare against each other's colonial settlements. Yeah. So you would not only, it wasn't just Esau against Gad or Reuben or the tribes. They would also have certain tribes, certain tribes that would basically, like today you would call them like a sellout, but they would work with them for whatever they would get in return to basically go against other tribes and their lands and so on. Because keep in mind, right, that when the Native Americans or the 10 tribes came to the Americas, they were dwelling here. But it doesn't mean that it was all la-di-da and everybody was all happy and sweet and everything was all good. No, you also had intertribal warfare. Different tribes would have conflicts with other tribes and they would go back and forth and so on and so forth at times. It says after the American Revolution, many conflicts were local to specific states or regions and frequently involved disputes over land use. Some entailed cycles of violent reprisal. Okay, so now going back to Daniel 7, it says here that that little horn, that same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. So I just gave you one example there. But also keep in mind that they also made war against not only just the northern kingdom, but the southern kingdom too. And war does not necessarily mean that it's always in the form of what you see, like guns on the battlefield and do. No, the fact that we're still under them right now, they're not right now. We're still under war, or we're still at war. There's psychological warfare, there's chemical warfare, biological warfare. They're still conducting all of these things, and they're targeting primarily Israelites. When they came out and they said, "Oh, we want you to roll up." Let me be very careful. We want you to roll up them sleeves, extend that arm, and do what's right. Okay, and then they said that primarily we got to target them blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. That's also biological warfare. Because yeah. Let me stop right there. Okay, but the point is, as it says, and prevailed against them. That's how we came under the foot of Esau, and still suffer, in our land, in the land of our captivity today. Verse 22, until the Ancient of Days came. See, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So Esau prevailed against us, even though now we know who we are and we're prophesying, we're still under them. And it isn't going to be until ultimately Yahweh sends Yahweh Shai back to uproot this devil that we're going to be up from under them. Right? As it says, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So when the Yahweh Shai comes back, he's going to take this place down, which is going to be that destruction of that little horn. And then the kingdom of Israel is going to begin, where the saints are going to possess the kingdom. We're going to gain that dominion. Verse 23, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth. So now, after Daniel has asked his question, the angel is now answering his question. So the angel says, okay, you asking about the fourth beast? The fourth beast is going to be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which is the Roman Empire, which shall be. Now, you notice it says here, the fourth kingdom, right? But when we read up above a couple of verses in verse 17, when Daniel was talking about the beasts, the angel told him, these great beasts are four, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. And I told you, don't get tripped up on the word kings. It's really talking about kingdoms, which is why when you come down to verse 23, he then refers to the fourth beast as the fourth kingdom. Okay? Because Rome, or the Roman Empire, was a kingdom, or, the dominion, not an individual. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Meaning they were going to come up in power, but they were going to rule differently than the previous empires before them, which, as I mentioned in the part one of this of Daniel, the 7th chapter, that Rome ruled with a senate. They didn't have just a sole monarch like ruler. Even when they had emperors, they still had the concept of a senate, which was a body of individuals that would, decide on certain matters, and ultimately give like the go ahead, sort of like a countersign on, what it is. Now, certain emperors could have just been like, I don't give a damn about the senate. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do anyway. But most of them wanted to comply with the senate because it wouldn't really end too well for you. If you had the Praetorian Guard on your side, then maybe you could get to a certain point. But if the Praetorian Guard switched up on you and they wanted to listen to the Senate or whatever, or they wanted to just turn on you, then you're done. And keep in mind too, there's a lot of politics going on, right? The Senate could influence people or do backhanded stuff, or hire people to kill an emperor. There are people on there that would be very bitter, and they would agree and say, yo, listen, we gotta take this guy out because he's not trying to listen to us, or we got to turn the people against them. So they rule differently than the previous ones. All right. And it says, shall devour the whole earth, which really meant the known world at the time, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. So that's how they got up in power. They basically subjected, the other kingdoms and other peoples under them. Verse 24, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. Once again, it's not talking about 10 actual literal individuals. It's talking about kingdoms. Okay, these 10 kingdoms were, not as big as obviously the Roman Empire itself, but they were within the Roman Empire, meaning they were kingdoms. But when Rome came up into power, it basically devoured them and made them subject onto Rome. So it says, and another shall rise after them. So you had the 10 horns, and another horn which shall rise after them, which is America, and he shall be diverse from the first. So this horn that was going to rise after them was going to be different than the original 10. And he shall subdue 3 kings, which we've already broken down, was when America fought against the British and the Spanish and the French. Verse 25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. So let me actually finish this. It says, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. So he shall speak great words against the Most High. America, like I mentioned before, is a country. It's filled up with people. There's a certain custom and lifestyle that is lived here. So the actual land does not have a big ass mouth on it that just starts talking shit every day. But it comes from what the people here say, how they act, how they behave. Okay. And the blasphemous behavior that they exhibit towards Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai and the angels and the Israelites, all of it. Okay, but mainly Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. And they speak proudly okay, against the Lord, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, which, as we can see, even on our day to day, matter of fact, they did it. Obviously, you had hardcore chattel slavery, you had the whole Jim Crow era, but even till today, there is a system that is designed to keep you oppressed. That's why predominantly you see Jake in the hoods. Predominantly, when you turn around, what you'll see is there's a McDonald's or a Burger King or whatever. That's you ain't gonna see a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. That's in the Edomite neighborhoods. Okay, and that's to keep you down in the low state. You look at the places Jake go to school, the places that they work, the kind of jobs that they do, the narrative that's pushed against them, like all of these things are wearing out the saints, and the saints are the Israelites. So you may not be shackled up physically, getting your back whipped, picking cotton, but in a way you're sort of still in that position, shackled mentally, and you're still subject to them. They've just switched it up a bit. Continuing, and think to change times and laws, which we see them do that all the time, right? They declare when is the time for this, when is the time for that. They say, oh, starting at this day is going to be officially this time of the year, or starting at this day we're going to have daylight savings, or we're going to move time forward an hour or back an hour. Like they basically have it in their minds to do these things, and also to change laws. So when you look into the word laws, one of the definitions shows of God. So what are they doing? The Most High set divine laws. They basically said, no, no, no. These are the laws. You want to have multiple women? No, no, no. We ain't dealing with that. But you know what though? You could be a sodomite. You could. It's okay to be yeah, okay, a TG. That's all good. It's all sweet. It's good in the hood. And they shall be given into his hand, that they are the Israelites. The he is Esau. But here it's really the horn, right? That is talking about. So, and they shall be given into his hand, meaning we were going to be subject unto them until a time and times and the dividing of time. Now, the time is representing 100 years. Times is double that, which is 200 years. And the dividing of time is half of 100 years, which is 50 years. So when you put it together, a time is 100, and is another way of, like in arithmetic, and is another way of saying plus. So you're saying 100 years plus 100, or plus 200 years, which is the times, and the dividing of times plus 50, that's 350. And that 350-year time period is very key. It's actually mentioned in other parts of the scriptures in different ways. Sometimes you'll see it says like 1,203 days, or it'll say something like 3 days and a half or something like that. Okay, but this 350-year period was really the period that we were completely given into the hand of Esau. Like I mentioned, where we were under their control, we were getting whipped. You couldn't read or write. Like we were completely at their mercy. Even leading into the times where you have things like Jim Crow era and so on and so forth, where they could just come up to your crib, take your son and go lynch him, or whatever the case is. Verse 26, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. So at the end of the day, the judgment is going to be set, and that's going to be that this horn, or this kingdom, is going to be taken down and is going to be destroyed, and in its stead is going to be the kingdom of heaven, right? Verse 27, and the kingdom and dominion, so the power, the rulership and authority, and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. And that's going to start with the elect. So it's when Yahushua comes back, okay, and it's going to start with Yahushua and the elect. And the elect are not just 144,000, okay? And also, the elect are not only in America. The elect are all the Israelites that have been elected or chosen to be delivered by the Heavenly Father. So continuing, it says, he shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, meaning it's never going to go down, it's never going to be destroyed. And all dominions shall serve and obey him. Who? Yahushua. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. So that was the vision that he got. That was the interpretation that the angel gave him. And that's basically what Daniel's input on it was. So what's Daniel, the 7th chapter, really talking about as a whole? It talks about the different empires, the different world empires that would rule, starting with the Assyrians, Babylonians, Medo-Persians, Greeks, Romans. And then it goes into talking about how you're going to have, after the Romans, you're going to have America that's going to come up. It talks about the different wars that America had with the European powers, right? The French, the Spanish, the British. It talks about how the Israelites were going to be subject here, okay, for a period of time, but also how after all of that, the Most High is going to bring judgment. He's going to destroy this place, and we're going to get the kingdom of heaven. Overall, that's pretty much what it's talking about in so many, to put so many words into few. And that's pretty much Daniel, the 7th chapter. So, Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. I'm pretty much going to stop here. Like I said, there are parts in here that you can spend more time reading more about. If you're more interested in the American wars and those kinds of things, you can definitely read about those. But I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.